Gentlemen. So on today's video, we are going to be talking about dopamine detoxing and how it is one of the major keys for really transforming almost all of the important areas of your life. If you really break it down, it helps you with improving your mental health. It helps with improving your focus. It helps with building better friendships. It helps you to be more focused on your goals. It helps you to just feel more enjoyment out of everyday life. And for me personally, over the past year or so, from consistently implementing dopamine detoxing within my own life and just trying to live a life where I'm less focused on dopamine overload and just more focused on trying to pull myself away from all the dopamine activities that just overstimulate me, I have personally began to feel so much more present, so much more focused, and I've achieved more in my life. And life is just so many times better because of implementing dopamine detoxing in my life. So in this video, I really want to talk about that, because whether you're trying to achieve certain goals, or whether you're trying to build better friendships, or whether you're trying to even just overcome the feeling of depression and emptiness in your life, it's helpful for every single one of those and so much more. So in this video, we're going to talk about dopamine detoxing. So let's get right into it. First of all, what is dopamine and what is dopamine detoxing? So dopamine is a chemical within our brains, and it essentially oversees pleasure and motivation within our brains. So on a very basic level, whenever you feel pleasure in your brain, that is dopamine in action. So when you play video games and you feel that certain sense of pleasure, that's dopamine. When you have food and you feel that pleasure, it's dopamine. When you have sex and you feel that sense of pleasure, that's dopamine. And essentially, dopamine is our body's reward system, and it was designed in order to encourage us as a species to take certain actions. So all of the things that are beneficial for us from a biological standpoint, those all increase our dopamine levels and bring us massive pleasure. So for example, in the past, having sex, that helps us to grow as a species and to procreate. So we have extreme dopamine that is released when we have sex. Same with exercising, that helps us to stay healthy, and we get dopamine release when we exercise. Eating food, that helps us to stay alive and keep nourished. That increases our dopamine levels. So all the things that help us to survive as a species from a biological perspective, those all release high levels of dopamine. The issue is that in this day and age, so many things that are absolutely terrible for our bodies and for our minds and for our health, both mentally and physically, they have been designed by these scientists and billion-dollar companies to release extreme levels of dopamine. So what that does is these big companies, they create things in such a way that they release massive amounts of dopamine. So we get hooked to these things. We get hooked to social media. We get hooked to video games. We get hooked to pornography. We get hooked to fast food, because all of these things have been designed to stimulate intense pleasure within our brains. They've essentially used our biological chemical that is designed to help us to survive, and they've made it toxic in such a way that now the very chemical that's designed to help us to survive is now killing us. And it's sad and scary that they've managed to literally just warp this natural, beautiful chemical that is meant to bring us pleasure and happiness, and now it's destroying us. And let me dive deeper into that. So again, dopamine is released through all these activities, but it's meant to be in a good way. But now it's been used in video games, and used for pornography, and used in fast foods. And it gets us addicted to these activities because so much dopamine is released that now even the natural activities like having sex and like making real friends and the things that we would have normally enjoyed 100 years ago, those don't release the same amount of dopamine as these new activities, as these fake activities. So we no longer want to do those things. So how do you overcome that? And why is that even a problem? Because if all these activities release dopamine, which helps us to feel more pleasure, then why is that a problem? How is too much pleasure a bad thing? So the issue there is that dopamine, it works in a strange way. It's not like we have an unlimited supply of dopamine. At any one time, there is a limit to how much dopamine our body can release. So when you have an intensely stimulating dopamine activity, like video games or like porn or fast food or like watching or being on social media for hours and hours at a time, because of that dopamine release, that intense dopamine release, you begin to get addicted to that activity. But the issue is that after our brains release high levels of dopamine, we don't go back to normal, to like our baseline level after we're finished with that activity. We go back to a lower point. So for example, if your baseline dopamine level, just to break it down and keep it simple, let's keep it like, let's say in units. Let's say that your baseline dopamine level is 1 unit of dopamine. Again, this is just an example. It doesn't work like this, but this is a very bare bones example of it. If your baseline level of dopamine is 1 unit of dopamine, and then you take video games and that boosts you up to 5 units of dopamine, once you finish playing the video games, you don't go back to 1, you go down to 0. Because you don't go back to where you started, you go down below that point. And it takes time to recover to go back to your baseline. And it's the same way with pornography or with eating fast food or with scrolling through social media. These all take us up to these extreme levels of dopamine. And after we finish those activities, we don't go back to 0, or we don't go back to our baseline. We go below it. So what that means in simple terms is that after you finish an activity that releases high levels of dopamine, you don't feel good afterwards. You feel shittier than when you began in the first place. And that helps to explain why so many people feel depressed and why they feel a sense of emptiness and why they just feel this bleak grayness in their lives, because we have filled our lives with social media and with video games and with fast food and with all of these endless forms of instant gratification that make us feel pleasure for the moment, but they end up destroying our mental health long term. So when you take these activities out of your life and you bring in activities that are natural and that don't release these extreme overstimulated levels of dopamine, you begin to feel better over the long term. It helps you with your focus. It helps you with your mental health, with your happiness. It helps you to be able to build better connections. People oftentimes overlook the power of dopamine detoxing because it sounds almost too simple to work. But when you actually try it, it's truly magical. Like within a week of just taking a step back away from all of the overstimulation, you will feel better. If you're depressed, it might not be because of anything inside of you. It might be because of all of the intense overstimulation that you're doing in your life, all the video games, all the pornography, all the social media, all the movies, all the instant gratification that destroys your mental health. It truly does. And people don't realize it. Like, it's sad. It's truly sad that in this modern day and age, we've become so attached to social media and to all of these different things that, again, they pull us in and we can't escape from the gravity of these things. But then once we're in, they just slowly begin to strip away layer after layer of our mental health. And it's so unhealthy and we don't even realize it. We don't. And it's such a sad thing because people all across the world are getting pulled into this vortex, into this cyclone. So what is the solution to all this? How do you get your dopamine levels back to normal so that you can have a good baseline level of happiness, and so that you can be more present in the moment, and so that you can connect more deeply with people around you and be more focused and pursue your goals and not be depressed? There's so many benefits, but how do you get those? Well, that is where dopamine detoxing comes in the picture. So what dopamine detoxing is essentially a chance for your mind to reset. It's when you take a conscious step back from all the activities that release extreme levels of dopamine, and you try to just give your body a chance to just recollect itself and come back to a healthy baseline. Because what you need to realize is that when you are on social media for hours a day, and you're playing video games for hours a day, and you're doing all these activities that stimulate extreme dopamine levels for hours a day for years and years on end, it messes up your brain. It truly does. Because you're going from baseline to a dopamine spike, down to below baseline, then back up to a spike, and down below baseline. And you never have a healthy normalness, because you're just going from spiking your dopamine with these activities, with the video games and with the social media and with everything else. And then after that is over with, you go back down below baseline, because again, you don't go back to your baseline, you go down, you go below it. So you just go from high to low, from high to low, from high to low. And you go, it's literally this cycle where you feel good for a few minutes from doing those activities, from going through those highs. And as soon as it's over, you go down to feeling like shit. Then you do the activity again, so you feel good. Then you go down to feeling like shit again, over and over again. And this is what addiction is. You are addicted to that feeling of feeling pleasure for a short amount of time, but as soon as it's over, you feel shitty. So the solution there is a dopamine detox. Is take a step back away from all these activities purposefully. And what that would look like in your day-to-day life would be to use your phone for only a couple hours, for a limited amount of time each day, and to delete social media, and to stop playing video games, and to stop watching pornography, and to just remove all of the activities in your life that are currently stimulating extreme levels of dopamine. And some of those activities that, commonly release high levels of dopamine are video games, like I said, pornography, watching movies, being on social media for hours at a time, just mindlessly scrolling through your phone for hours, eating fast food, doing drugs, drinking alcohol. All these activities release extreme levels of dopamine. And as soon as you remove those from your life and focus on getting yourself back to a healthy baseline, you will begin to feel more focused and less depressed and more present in the moment. And you'll be able to build better friendships and to connect with people better. It's a simple thing, but it carries over into every aspect of your life. I used to constantly feel brain fog. I used to constantly feel depressed. I used to have no focus. I used to not be able to become vulnerable and to have real conversations. But dopamine detoxing helps with all of those. Every single last one of them. Every single one. So whether you're struggling with your mental health, or whether you're struggling to pursue your goals most effectively, or whether you're struggling to focus, or whether you're struggling with anything, dopamine detoxing is truly, I would say it's the number one hack for pursuing your goals in any area of your life. It doesn't matter what the area is. Dopamine detoxing is one of the most powerful things that you can do to truly transform your life in the short term. Because again, we are so distracted in this day and age. We aren't in control of our minds. Most of us aren't. We are literally zombies. And you might not agree with that, but what you need to realize is that as soon as your phone rings or vibrates, your attention is instantly just entrapped by it. Like you are literally, it's like a drug. Like we are all entrapped by these cell phones, like zombies. And most of us don't have control over our brains, and we don't even realize it. Like the fact that something can just vibrate and now you're instantly just transfixed by it, that's a problem. It is. And when you dopamine detox, that gives you the chance to become healthy again and to get back to that healthy baseline. So again, that's kind of the basis of how dopamine detoxing works. You essentially just remove all of these dopamine enhancing activities from your life for a short amount of time. And that helps you to get back to a baseline where you can focus more effectively, and where you can have real conversations, and where you feel more present in the moment, and where you feel happier because now your pleasure levels are back to normal. So you can feel pleasure again from everyday activities like meeting friends and like working out and playing sports and doing simple things in everyday life, rather than only being able to be stimulated by these intense activities. But anyways, guys, that is the video for today. And I highly, highly, highly encourage you to do a dopamine detox if you are having issues in any area of your life, because it can help with depression. It can help with mental focus. It can help with the pursuit of your goals. It can help in every aspect of your life. It can help with your friendships. It can help with your relationships. Everything. Every single aspect of your life can be improved by dopamine detoxing. So I highly encourage you to give it a try. But anyways, that is the video for today. I truly hope you got some amazing value out of this, and I will see you on the next video. And always remember that consistency creates kings. And if you are not consistent in the areas of your life that matter the most to you, then you are not going to see results. Anyways, peace out, boys.